Hey there, fans of brotherly love wrestling. It is I, Vic Delicious.
Philly's own, the Mecca here.
It is the real McCoy, J.D.X. Justin D. Xavier. And
it's your man, CD, the fallen angel, Christopher Daniels.
Hello, boys and girls. This is your old friend RJ City.
Hey there, brotherly love wrestling. Bill Carr here.
Hey everyone, this is two-time guest Wheeler Yuta.
Two bozos from Philadelphia flapping their gums about pro wrestling this, pro wrestling that.
Which is not that unique in the grand scheme of things yet.
You are in for a treat because you're tuned in to Brotherly Love Wrestling.
Philadelphia, are you ready?
No! They said, are you ready?
This is Brotherly Love Wrestling Podcast, your first stop for everything professional wrestling. So sit back and enjoy wrestling talk at its finest with your hosts, Larry Hall and Joe Corrado.
Welcome, everybody, to Brotherly Love Wrestling. Today on the show, we have comedian Dan Brown. Dan, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me on. I am super excited to talk wrestling. I am super excited to be here. I got my cough drops right next to me. I got two things of water right here. I am ready to go.
Nice.
Yeah, you never know what wrestle talk will. I mean, it could excite you that much that you go into a coughing contusion and you're dehydrated. You need to stay hydrated and make sure you got the lozenges.
Well, I got to say this. A few weeks ago, I was a guest on another wrestling podcast, and I was getting really excited. And we were recording at like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm down in my basement here, and I'm screaming and I'm yelling, and my wife is texting me, "Shut your friggin' mouth! The kids are trying to sleep." I can't help it, man. I get excited when it comes to wrestling.
How long has it been fandom for you? 30 years? Over?
I mean, I'm 36. Okay. My first experience in wrestling was in '94. Watching it on TV. We briefly talked about it here. I'll just, for the listeners at home, first thing I ever saw was Hulk Hogan doing a promo with Dave Sullivan on Saturday Night Main Event in WCW television, and I legitimately thought that Dave Sullivan was his brother for the longest time because he kept calling him brother. When you have no, when that's your first actual seeing of Hulk Hogan and you don't know what the gimmick is, I was like, why else would he call somebody a brother a million times unless he was a brother? I really started getting into it though, probably around 98, and it was with my cousins, and it was with originally WCW NWO Revenge on Nintendo 64.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like, even though it's just a video game controller, just having in your hand controlling these wrestlers, and I was fascinated with the Giant. I thought, like, this guy's got to be the greatest wrestler of all time, and I kept wondering. I'm like,
technician.
Yeah, and well, the whole time I'm playing this, I'm like, how come my cousins never picked the 7-foot tall guy? And they just beat my ass a million times over. And then eventually you get older and you realize, like, oh yeah, it's because the Giant really wasn't that that great in the game either.
Wow.
But
he's
yeah,
a champion, though.
Yeah, he was definitely champion. Right? He got over. You can't deny that.
He was the champion not too long after joining WCW.
Yeah, no, I think the first thing he did was beat Hogan in his first match, and
Yeah,
that was a simpler time back then.
Yeah.
When you had characters and stories and shit like that, you mean?
Well, I mean, just think of it like this: like in today's day and age of wrestling, imagine if Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, however you want to know him as, we'll just use him as a reference point. Beloved by the fans. Let's say he's the world champion, and then for the first time ever, we see Omos come out and just beat him. I think you would see a lot of people turning off the television and not turning it back on for a long time. Like you look back, and it really wasn't that long ago where the Giant did that to Hogan, but it's a totally different sport now.
Yeah.
It is, but I'm so intrigued. Like it because I was such a fan back then, and I really do love like the time that I watched wrestling, and I still love watching wrestling now. I think I honestly think that social media is and was like the death of like not wrestling in general, but being able to enjoy wrestling in a way that you.
I mostly agree with you there. Because I mean, if you think about it like this, in 2014, CM Punk walks out of the WWE. And then, he walks out actually in Cleveland, where I'm from. Walks out in Cleveland the day after the Royal Rumble, and no one hears from him until later that year. He's on Colt Cabana's podcast, drops on Thanksgiving. And if you're like me and you're going to bed, the night before Thanksgiving, and it's like around midnight, and you see a picture, popping up on all the wrestling sites that you follow of Colt Cabana and CM Punk, you're finding any single way you can to listen to that podcast. And I mean, I was up till like 4 a.m. listening to it. So what eventually came out with that episode, if you remember, was he was talking about that the handicap match between him and the Shield.
Yes.
And he just kept saying, you got to make Roman look strong. You got to make Roman look strong. And that truly was the point where the fans turned against Roman Reigns. I mean, I wouldn't say that they were exactly, all in on him beforehand. Yeah, but I mean, it was clear from the time the Shield came out. It's like, okay, at least how I saw it, I was like, Ambrose is eventually going to be the guy that's like, upper mid card. But like, you look at Roman Reigns and you're like, that's the main event.
Yeah.
And
but I feel like everybody loved Rollins because of his work rate.
Yeah, and Rollins was the one I think that eventually, I mean, clearly got over the most in the beginning.
Yeah, but they definitely didn't want that, but they kind of just, it was so blatant and to the point. They're like, well, we can't fucking avoid this.
No, and he kind of reminded me, especially those early Shield days, of Dolph Ziggler.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, if you remember, like Dolph Ziggler was so good that he made everyone else look amazing.
Yeah,
but the
He's
problem
one of
was
the most underappreciated and undervalued wrestlers.
Oh, absolutely.
In the modern era.
But what ended up happening was that you beat Dolph, and then a couple weeks later, okay, you beat him again, and then you beat him again, then you beat him again, and then in the mindset of even the smartest fan, you're not taking him seriously anymore. Like, not as like an athlete or like a wrestler or as a person, but when you see him on TV and it's a scripted sport.
Losing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, okay, do I really think Dolph Ziggler's going to beat John Cena? No. But
they had a problem with that for a while. Surprises were pretty much non-existent.
Yeah, and
except for the cash-in by Rollins, that was.
I have to say,
Rollins was like perfect. If that injury didn't happen, I would have loved to see what the trajectory was from there. Because that slowed down momentum huge for him.
Well, I didn't see that happening at all, because what I originally thought was going to happen, and like as you saw during the match, Roman was just getting the piss beaten out of him by Lesnar.
Wow.
I legitimately thought Brock Lesnar was going to walk away with the WWE Championship that night, because it was just announced that he just signed a new. Yeah, well, I mean, it was announced that he just signed like a new 2 or 3 year deal. So that night, Daniel Bryan won the IC title. John Cena won the US title, and it really just matched up perfectly to where it's like, hey, if we're running 2 towns, Daniel Bryan headlines one show, John Cena headlines the other, and then Brock Lesnar can be our attraction whenever he needs to come in.
That's what he was. He was good at it.
He was great at it. And I thought, and oh God, I have so much PTSD from WWE from like that point on up until like a year and a half ago.
It's going to take a lot of nerves with all of us.
It really does, man. But I thought that was a great surprise, executed perfectly, because no one expected it, man. And at the same time, no one had ever seen it where it's like, hey, you're interrupting a match to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the main event of WrestleMania.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's I mean, that's one good takeaway from the 2010s, I'd say. I mean, what out of curiosity, when do you guys think that it really started going down? Like I know that's a weird way to ask it in the WWE, but
when did it start to like be bad, like almost
like
unwatchable?
yeah.
So it's
And
kind of
I'll interrupt your thought here as you're thinking about that,
sure.
because I just want to bring up, because no matter how bad it's been and how almost unwatchable it was, at some point there was always at least like one or maybe two things where it's like, okay, I'm watching for this.
Yeah.
Or, like I mean, probably, okay, I went to WrestleMania in 2017. Probably shortly after that, it had to be, yeah, shortly after that, where I just, okay, I'm going to watch Raw, and then the moment they insult my intelligence, I'm turning it off.
that could have been like within the first
20 minutes.
seconds of the show.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of times where it was like, okay, I didn't even make it past the opening segment.
Yeah, it was bad. So
I think there were points after Punk. Like, I think it's slowly, like you said, and not just because CM Punk left. I'm not going to say that was the reason.
Was it when Daniel Bryan got the shove at Royal Rumble, and when everyone wanted him to win and Roman won? I mean,
maybe.
I feel like that was a time when it was kind of like, oh Jesus, and like it would just spiral after that. Like when they started to like push Roman when he wasn't even remotely ready, and the whole sink swim aspect of it like was not sinking in on the WWE side. They were just like, nope, they're gonna like it. I know they're gonna like it. Nobody liked it. They just kept running it. They're like, come on, man, you got like so many other people, because they had people there that they could have gotten over. It's just that it was the same. Like, I don't know. I think Vince had a stroke somewhere in that point, and just like something happened to his brain.
But you know what's amazing about that too is that, I mean, I remember just like screaming. And to give you an idea, I will honestly say this. I truly believe Roman Reigns is probably my favorite wrestler of all time.
Really?
So much so I named my son Roman.
Wow.
Yes. So I remember watching him get booed and just being mad, because I'm like, this guy is great. And everyone hates him, and they're fucking this guy up so much. And I just kept thinking, I was like, he needs to be a heel.
Yeah.
Because part of the reason, but part of the reason was, it's like, work aside, Roman Reigns walks into a room and every woman's jaw just hits the floor. I mean, that right there is
I'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, that right there is enough to be like
kind eyes.
Yeah. There's a lot about that man that
he's just a run-of-the-mill like just Greek god.
Yeah, just, hey, do you model? You look like you model.
I think that's what a lot of wrestlers, they call the airport test. If he walks through the airport, you know what I mean? People are going to go, who is that? And I think, to your point, I think Roman, you know what I mean? If he walks through an airport, you got to look at him and go, holy shit, who is that guy?
But also think of it like this. Like, if you were in a bar and a big fight breaks out and every guy in that bar has to pick a side, you know what I mean? Because it's like everyone in the bar is going to be fighting with each other. And Roman Reigns walks into the room. And if you don't know anything about wrestling, you just see that guy. Your first thought is, I want him on my team.
Yeah.
He just
all right, do not swing at him because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or if I do, don't miss and make it the best one of my life.
Yeah. It's, come from behind or something. But I mean, it was maddening for years watching him get booed out of buildings where it was like, there's so much money behind him.
I want to know what drew you to Roman, though. Out of the whole Shield, like, what was the time frame we were like, all right, this is my guy. I'm ride or die with this dude.
Um, great question.
Especially because I think out of the entire time we've had this podcast, you might be the first like ride or die Roman Reigns fan through
Like a
the
genuine Roman
bad.
Reigns fan who
Yeah.
was a fan before all of the.
Aside from you not being a child, like you're
Yeah.
our age, so like children, we get it. But someone who's our age and you know what I mean, in their late 20s, watching him go through, like, yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say probably. I would say probably a year after he wrestled Brock at WrestleMania 31. Probably not a full year, probably like, 9 months or,
Was that
whatever.
after the cash in?
Yeah, I would say right after. I mean, I was in then. Don't get me wrong. I was in then, but it was right after Sheamus cashed in, and then how long was Sheamus's run for? Like 2 weeks?
Oh, when he did this, when he beat him live in Philly. I was at that show.
Yeah.
When Roman beat Sheamus, he said it was Sheamus 513.
Right.
Because he beat him in 5 minutes and 13 seconds.
That got a huge pop from the crowd that night, didn't it?
Oh my God, dude! The crowd went absolutely nuts, and then the next week they were in New York and they booed the shit out of him.
Yeah, I mean that's just typical Vince WWE in that time period of not capitalizing on anything good.
Yeah,
I would say it was
story of Vince McMahon in the 2000s.
I would say, and apologize, this is I don't know if the viewers at home are seeing this, but yeah, I got my Great Dane Dusty's right next to me, and this is my girl Ember Moon. Yeah,
nice.
we actually had to put down. I had a Saint Bernard named Heyman. We had to put down recently.
I love that they're all wrestling names. That's awesome.
Wait, you got Dusty Heyman. Who's there?
This is Ember Moon. Then
Great.
So my 3-year-old's name is Delilah. So that's not wrestling related. But my baby girl, my 1-year-old is Natalia. So
nice.
Oh, how about that?
So for a guy that married a woman that absolutely hates wrestling, I done pretty good negotiating the names.
Yeah, you got a lot of big wins. A lot of big wins.
I did, man.
I have a beta fish, and its name is Stardust.
Oh, cool.
and the one that died, his name was Jericho.
Oh man.
I got little tiny.
Hold on. I want to say something right here. For everyone that ever shit on Stardust being a shitty character, fuck you. Okay, Stardust was a great character, and I was entertained as hell.
I liked Stardust.
I liked it too.
They hated him so much, and you could tell after the fact, like, man, they hated him. He hated it, but he made it work.
Yeah,
I would say this. Cody never phoned in a performance.
Personalities.
Yeah,
there's like Dash and Cody Rhodes when he was with Orton and DiBiase. Like, I liked all of Cody's gimmicks.
I'm going to say I thought when they were good, yes,
Sandow.
Yeah,
that was fantastic. By the way,
it was
those two together. I mean, Damien Sandow rode a wave of popularity for a good amount of time and was doing nothing but phenomenal, hysterical work. And there was no appreciation. He got a monstrous pop in the Royal Rumble, and it stopped the whole Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
When he walked in.
I listened to Arn Anderson's podcast years ago, and they went over that Rumble, and he was like, so who were the 3 guys that went in before Damien Sandow? And he went over, it's like Ryback, I think Sin Cara and someone else. He goes, what would have happened if Sandow eliminated each one of them? It wouldn't have changed the outcome of the match. But he goes in there, throws Sin Cara over the top rope, instant pop. Imagine if he did it to one other guy.
And if he does it in his way when it's fucking hysterical, because he was great at working a crowd. Like, it's not like a normal elimination. Like, he fucking does something like sneaky or fucking hysterical, gives him an eye jab and then throws him over. Something.
Yeah. And I'm one of these guys too. Like I always tell my friends, like, I'm a Jim Cornette guy. I don't typically care for too much comedy in wrestling, but I do think that there is certainly a spot for comedy in wrestling, but it can only be done by the right people in the right ways.
Correct.
I think Sandow was incredible at it. I think R-Truth is incredible at it.
Jericho.
What's that?
Jericho is
Jericho, yeah. I mean, Jericho's had a great history of it. I mean, I haven't been a big fan of his stuff the past few years, but I mean,
it died with the list of Jericho. The list of Jericho was fucking. It was perfect.
I loved. Do you remember when he was in the ring with KO and the New Day are out there mocking him, and he's putting their names on the list, but one by one, and then he points out, "Hey, Woods is laughing." He goes, "Woods, are you laughing? You want to see what happens?" And Woods is like selling it.
Yes.
Yeah. No. That and the second time he put Mick Foley's name on the list was also awesome, because just the way how Mick was like, "I was the first name on the list. I was the one who started it."
You know what happens when you start the list?
Yeah.
Like Jericho, I think Jericho WWE was his best. Whenever he was in the WWE, was Jericho's best.
Yeah, well, do you remember? It was right before WrestleMania 28. Another one I went to, by the way. And
how many of those have you gone to?
I've been to 3.
Okay.
I've been to 23 in Detroit. That was the main event was John Cena and Shawn Michaels. Yes. Undertaker also wrestled Batista.
Died at that one. He would have been.
I'm a giant Shawn Michaels mark. Absolutely.
Oh, it was great. It was awesome. That was one where some streaker like ran into the ring
in the beginning.
Yes. I went to 28 in Miami, which was Rock Cena, and then 33, which was first one.
That was one,
right?
Yeah.
That's when the Rock won.
That's when the Rock won. You're right. And then I went to 33 in Orlando with Roman Reigns and Undertaker.
That could have been when it fucking went down.
You're probably right. I mean, that probably was the thing that solidified it.
That was the nail in Punk's back.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think. Wait, are we talking 33 right now, or?
No, the one in Miami when The Rock beat Punk at the Rumble.
Yes. No, that was a year later. Because Punk wrestled Jericho at 28.
Okay.
For the WWE Championship, and then a few months later, they have that wedding segment with Daniel Bryan and AJ Lee.
Yes.
And then The Rock comes out to announce that he's the #1 contender at the Royal Rumble, regardless who's the champion. And at the time, I was a huge Rock mark as well. So I'm like, this is going to be great. The Rock's coming back. He's getting another WWE run. He's going to have
the same way.
So are you still the same way?
You know what? I'm indifferent because of right now the way that the company's being ran is completely different than it was when it happened then. So now when he's coming, he's playing a role of Brock. He's just a special attraction. Yeah. If he were to win the title, I have faith that they know what they're doing after he does. Like they didn't have a plan the first time. Like their plan was just Rock Cena.
Yeah.
Right? That was it. They didn't really put any other thought into it.
Yeah.
There was nothing really. Like now there's thought being put into pretty much all the main storylines and a lot of the like background players, the mid-card players, the women's division. Like there's a plan for literally all of them. Like you could see it in the shows. Like, cool. There's like clear paths for everybody. And there's even some curveballs. Like the whole last night, Rollins getting attacked by Larry, help me with his name.
Bronson Reed.
Bronson Reed.
Which, by the way, for Raw being a 2-hour show right now, they gave them multiple segments.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
throughout the show, they just kept running that same thread.
Yeah. So they did a great job the whole time through, but they must have a lot of faith that match is going to rock if they're putting this much time and effort and literally TV time into these guys right now.
This is the test. I bet you this is Bronson Reed's test.
Yeah.
All right. You're in there with the prime player, a main event talent on a big stage. Show us what you got. This could skyrocket Bronson Reed's career too. Doing something with Seth Rollins. What if he completely destroys him?
Yeah. The only thing I'm worried about is what if Bronson Reed becomes Tom McGee? Do you understand where I'm saying this? Where we're watching Bronson Reed going, look at this monster. He looks so good. But, the old story was Vince jumped out of his chair watching Tom McGee wrestle going, this is our next Hulk Hogan. When it turned out Brett was the one steering the match the whole time.
Yep.
And, Brett was the one that made him look great.
Yep.
So yeah. I think in 2024 and with somebody like Triple H who understands the actual wrestling aspect of wrestling better than Vince, he would understand that Bronson Reed is better than that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not only that, but Triple H he's shown that he's been really good at just highlighting what these people are good at. Like right now, we're looking at AEW and we're seeing Ricochet with free will and free power. And you could tell why he was given what he was given in WWE to do, because people can't relate with what he's saying. He's not good at he's corny. I mean, let's put it that way. He's corny. Very
He can't
corny.
get people invested in him, in his character.
Right.
So he wasn't given that in WWE. They highlighted what he was. He was an athlete. He was a pure athlete. That was his gift.
I thought the best thing Ricochet did in WWE, other than his short rivalry with Gunther, which Gunther's going to make everyone look great.
Yeah.
So I thought his tag team with his tag team with Braun Strowman, I thought could have gone so much further than it did, because
it looked like they go for like a perfect, like you get them into a tournament, they win the tournament, they're the tag team champions, let them go do their thing for a little while. That's what it looked like.
And Braun's in there to take the hot tag after Ricochet does all the work and bumping and making the other guy look great, and then does another hot tag, gets himself in, does some of the flying stuff, and their finishing move where Ricochet's jumping off of I thought it was great.
Built for each other.
Yeah.
I thought it was phenomenal.
Gear, they would have been perfect for each other.
I would, however, as you say, matching gear. I want to see Ricochet dress like Braun Strowman. I don't want to see it the other way around.
I don't know. Braun Strowman and some flashy like shit, that would be pretty cool. Be funny as hell.
It would be.
If he's wearing like the skin tight pants, the fucking.
Well, if he came dressed out like a superhero, like remember how Ricochet used to come out looking like a Power Ranger? Yeah.
He could come out as freaking the Hulk. Just paint him green.
Yeah.
You wear like Braun when he's angry, and he just runs around the ring.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. Perfect.
Now, have you guys watched the Vince McMahon docuseries yet?
Yes.
Yet?
No, I haven't gone to it yet.
I tried
myself.
I told Joe, because of obviously all three of us have been fans about the same amount of time, that he's really not missing a lot through these 6 episodes. Like it's really that last episode, the last 30, 40 minutes where they kind of touch on the controversy, because everything else, you know what I mean, is stuff that we lived through and we've heard about different stories throughout the years anyway. Not that it's not good, because it is good. It's very good, but it's the same stories that we've been hearing.
Yeah, I watched it, and as you said, Larry, I was at first, the first time I watched it, I was very disappointed because I was like, I already know all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to know, like his childhood's been such a mystery for so long.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to be great if they're doing. Yeah, I was like, if they're doing 6 episodes, I was like, one of these have to be on him growing up.
Yeah.
And
I think he was like sexually abused by someone. That's why he turned out the way he turned out.
I think
Like,
he
his
was
father.
admitted by
father.
his mother and his father-in-law or something. Or I'm sorry, stepdad.
Stepfather.
Sexually abused him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that explains a lot of, like, not saying that it's an excuse by any stretch of the imagination, but that would explain a lot of things to why he's kind of wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about it, he spent the first 12, 13 years of his life in that,
Yes.
environment. And then the next environment you go to live in is with a father that won't tell you that he's proud of you, that won't tell you that he loves you, that you're literally striving. You guys know those memes where it's like the guy pushing the domino and it starts small and it goes big.
Yeah.
I made a handful of them after watching that series where the small domino was Vince Sr. asked Vince Jr. to be an announcer for one night. And then the big domino is I believe in Joe Hendry, clap, clap. And then the other one was, the same thing, Vince Sr. asked Vince Jr. And then the big domino is Swerve Strickland gets a syringe put in his mouth by Hangman Adam Page. Because literally all of this stuff is happening because of Vince getting into the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's that his rough childhood. What's that?
I think people forget that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Vince literally built this whole thing that we see today. It was because of him. It's crazy. And it's kind of like you feel kind of torn. You're like, well, we appreciate it, but you're still a psychopath.
Yeah.
Well, I say it like this, and I heard somebody, it was Chris Rose from the Best Damn Sports Show, period. If you remember that amazing show.
Yeah.
He explained, should Kurt Schilling be in the Hall of Fame? And his ultimate answer was yes, saying, one day I'll take my kids to Cooperstown and I could spend 10 minutes talking about how Kurt Schilling is one of the greatest pitchers that's ever existed. And then probably spend a half hour talking about how he's one of the worst human beings he's ever met. And that's how I feel when I talk about Vince. I can spend all day talking about what this guy's done great for wrestling. And then I can spend the next week talking about all the ways that he has killed professional wrestling. And on top of that,
Hogan.
but on top
Hogan
of it,
fits in there too.
We can spend the next month talking about all the lives he's destroyed from being just a terrible person in general. So
that would be depressing.
I mean, and we're not even just talking about, the cases now that he has going against him. I mean, you look at all the wrestlers' lives that he destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, Terry Taylor is still getting, he walks into a building and a fan sees him, and what are they going to do? It's.
I hated that. I hated that for him. I was big in the WCW, and the guys that I hated seeing that, like those fucking stupid fucking gimmicks. I'm like, God, he's torturing these people. They're fucking terrible.
It's the main reason Sting did not come to WWE for the longest time. Is because he thought that Vince was going. Yeah, that Vince was going to, because of WCW, fuck with him and mismanage him.
He would have, though. I mean, we saw how long did it take from the time WCW and ECW were purchased for Booker T to win a World Heavyweight Championship in WWE? And remind you, most of that time, they had 2 World Heavyweight Championships.
Yeah, they had the WWE and the World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah.
They didn't take any of those guys seriously. Not one of them.
Same thing with RVD. I mean, it literally took him until 06 One Night Stand.
Yeah.
To be
his home fucking court.
Yeah.
Like they basically did it because of that. I don't think
a month later,
One Night Stand, he wouldn't have won the championship.
I don't think he would have. Although I will say this. So if you remember that first One Night Stand and he went out there and he spoke from the heart and he had that incredible promo, but he was hurt and you're like, you felt for him. Like I remember being a teenager wanting to cry for this guy. And then they did it wasn't a draft, but it was like the Superstar Exchange where it's like every Monday and Friday. Was it Friday or Thursday SmackDown was on at that time? I think it was
Thursday.
Yeah, you might be right. I think it was Thursday. And they would go back and forth. It was like, okay, so this week Raw got Cena, and then, SmackDown got Batista and whatnot. Excuse me. Yeah, my dog just knocked over the cage. 1 second. So you had all this, and then I remember RVD was injured at the time, and he he came out with the knee brace on and he cut the promo like he did at One Night Stand. I was like, it's about time we're going to get a serious RVD. And then when he finally came back from injury, it was right back to, Vince's, 420, smoke it up.
Yeah.
Well, not even that, but like the whole like laid back dude kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was so
Doesn't
disappointing
care.
to see.
Yeah.
Doesn't care where he's at. Doesn't care what he's doing. Doesn't care. That's what Vince wanted everyone to be besides his top person. You guys just
Right.
pretend to be happy to be here, and you just do this, and this person's going to get everything.
Yeah.
That's how he's always been. Not,
Well, I mean,
only one person eats in the Vince McMahon table. Now,
well, I mean, if you see why,
everybody-
it's like, shortly after the Attitude Era, Steve Austin walked out when he wasn't happy. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
not to do movies or anything, just went, fuck this, I'm done.
Yeah, he was done. Tired of it.
Then The Rock left and did movies. And I don't
I
think
wonder
Vince
how that
ever.
worked out for him.
What's that? Yeah, I don't think. Well, I mean, have you seen Doom? He'll be back any day now. Well, actually, if you've seen his recent publicity, you'll understand why he's coming back more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, friggin' Black Adam wasn't that good either.
I didn't hate Black Adam, but I think the only reason I didn't hate Black Adam was because I heard how shitty of a movie it was. So I went into it watching, like thinking this is going to be the shittiest movie I've ever seen. And when I walked out, I was like, well, it wasn't the shittiest.
Yeah.
So
Low expectation. Yeah.
It was shit, but you know what? It wasn't the most shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I meant to bring this up. And the whole reason I keep notes and everything, because I drift off in wrestling.
You're a professional.
I would say, I think it was right around that first episode of SmackDown when it went to Fox. That's when The Rock started to lose his luster with me. Because I remember he went out and it was just like, hey, it's The Rock. This is cool. But it's like, you felt like you were watching Rock paint by numbers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This wasn't Hollywood Rock, was it?
No, this was 2019 Rock. Like,
oh, this was The Rock that just came back for he was phoning it in.
Yeah, I mean,
he was trying to just do it like, I'm The Rock. I'm gonna get anything anyway.
Yeah, and he came back. He did that thing with Austin Theory and Pat McAfee on the one episode of SmackDown. And you're like, okay, that was kind of fun. It's always fun to see The Rock. And then he did the segment with Jinder Mahal, and I thought that really showed how stale the Rock gimmick has gotten.
Yeah.
And it also showed it's like, hey, Jinder Mahal kind of showed you up here. And
that says a lot.
It really does. But you know what? Jinder Mahal, I thought was.
AEW, did he?
What's that?
Jinder Mahal didn't get signed by AEW, did he?
Mm-mm.
I'm really surprised about that because Tony Khan was a complete dick to him. He could have at least given him a job.
You know what I thought Jinder should have done? He should have went to the Indies with a whole new gimmick. I think he should have spent probably a year like trying to do like MMA training, like start going out in MMA shorts and like going out there and just beating the piss out of indie wrestlers across the nation.
Just ground and pound them?
Ground and pound, and kind of like how Matt Cardona was like the title collector and something like the Bone Collector or something. You know what I mean?
Well, Austin Aries was the title collector.
He was, yeah. Yeah, that's where Austin had a depending who you're listening to about his attitude and but I think Corny told a story about working at MLW and they're like, oh yeah, we're bringing in Austin Aries. He's like, all right, let me know when he talks you out one of your belts. But I mean, with Cardona, I mean it was more of like a natural feeling, like, hey, this is kind of building up its own.
He wasn't trying to like overly big time it. He's like, yeah, like I'm coming from the WWE. I was the Intercontinental Champion type thing. He still put in the work. Like he came in and he was just like, I'm gonna help. He wasn't just helping himself. He was helping the whole indie promotion.
Yeah.
When he's actually very, very good for the independents. And he has been for a long time now.
Matt Cardona is this generation's indie Matt Hardy.
Because
Matt, if you remember, Matt was going around the indies for a long time. And
yes, it was. We went to some of those shows.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal.
Yeah, and he always did good business. He sold tickets. He had a very nice payday, which absolutely deserved. You drew the house, man. And how many good shows did he provide for how many promotions? How many good houses did he provide? How many opportunities did he help give some of these other wrestlers that, I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick here when I say this, but it's like, hey, if Matt wasn't here, do we have, 600 people in the building, or, do we have 50?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have people lined up out the door to get his autograph?
Exactly. And how many of those people came to see Matt Hardy ended up walking away with somebody else's merch from the table too?
Yeah.
Exactly, dude. I mean,
Guilty.
it's when you can tell. I think you can tell the sincerity with people. That's why I hated what AEW did to Matt Hardy over the years.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
it's
He's
yes,
nothing but good ever since he went through his shit and
dude.
got himself fixed.
And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, Matt Hardy was hard to watch because and I wouldn't say so much because of his work, but because as fans, we watched him. You know what I mean? And you it's the old thing. It's like, what's his name? Cornette was telling Kurt Angle, he's like, not every night has to be the main event of WrestleMania. Sometimes they're just happy if you go out and wave.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought for a while, it's like, can Matt just please come out and wave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really what I wanted from.
And then he was broken and
Yeah.
all was fixed. He was broken, but he was the ironic thing is that he was actually fixed.
I thought the broken Matt Hardy, especially in TNA, was the best work he'd ever done.
Period.
It was genius. It was exactly what that company needed. It was exactly what he needed. And believe it or not, a lot of people needed it too. They needed to see something completely bizarre, out of the norm, fucking creepy, crazy. It was perfect. Like TNA Matt Hardy was perfect. And Larry actually showed me, like he was keeping up with it and he told me about it. And once I saw it, I was like, this is amazing. And now I have to go out of my way to watch this complete good show.
I mean, during that time too, like you said, that was something TNA sorely needed because TNA was going through a lot of issues back then as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't, and then through the lawsuit we find out that okay, maybe Bischoff and Hogan didn't take all the money because they were actually contracted through Spike TV. They weren't even contracted through TNA. So any of their money issues didn't come from those guys. It came from Dixie Carter and Panda Energy just mishandling everything time and time again. And it's one of those things where as fans, I think we can get cynical sometimes and we can enjoy watching a downfall.
Yeah.
And there was a while where I think a lot of us, and I'll include myself into that, we watched the downfall of TNA and just kept laughing at it without the realization where it's like, hey, this might put 40 wrestlers out of work, let alone who's actually working in an office right now for them. Like that's their livelihood. So I think truly at that time, Matt Hardy, 2015, 2016, going to 2017, saved that company. And without Matt Hardy being there, I'll say this, I don't think TNA's around.
I agree.
They might have been able to have a resurgence at some point if like Anthem bought them and whatnot. But they were pretty much dead in the water without Matt Hardy. Because here's the thing that I tuned into. The funny thing about when we were speaking earlier about the Matt Hardy independent tour, I can just remember some of the people that, and I wasn't I didn't watch Lucha Underground or anything like that, but because of a Matt Hardy being on a show that we went to, also Tommy Dreamer. It was Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore.
Oh yeah,
the run. So we got to see Pentagon. We got to see Ray Phoenix. I didn't know anything about Sami Callihan prior to that, and it was it was awesome. Getting to see other wrestlers that I wasn't familiar with. And we still hope for that today.
In 2007, I drove to Cincinnati. So from Cleveland, Cincinnati is a 4-hour drive. Stayed with some other girl at the time. To go watch an indie show because I was, yeah. It's, when I was 19 or 20, however old I was then. Oh, I'm sorry. This is 2008.
Damn.
So 2008, we drove to Cincinnati. I was friends with a gentleman by the name Chris the Brain, who was a personality on HWA television. This was years after it was a WWE developmental territory, but just so now they're just a regular independent. He was doing some backstage work with them as well. He was like, "Hey, why don't you just come down? It's going to be a good show." And it's one of those things where I vaguely remember a few people, but in the main event that night, I forgot who the other guy was, but I watched in a Falls Count Anywhere match, John Moxley wrestle in front of 30 people.
And this was after his WWE run?
This was in 2008.
No, this is way before.
Oh, this is before his run.
This is before.
Pink hair? This is when he had pink hair?
He didn't have pink hair then.
Okay.
I mean, he may have been going through the pink hair phase.
Yeah.
But just not dying it right then and there.
Yeah.
When did he officially get signed by the WWE? Was it it was probably soon after that, right? Because he was in developmental for a little bit.
I would think if he started in 2008, or I mean, if I saw that show in 2008, I would imagine he was signed by developmental by probably 2010. If you think
I was going to
about
say
it.
like 10 or 12.
I mean,
when did the Shield debut? Was that
2013?
13, right?
Yeah, late 2013. And at WrestleMania 28 and 2012, because we went to the Fan Access events, me and my buddy I went with, they had a lot of the FCW guys there. And at that time, he wasn't Seth Rollins, he was Tyler Black wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool. I mean, I watched Tyler Black wrestle. Oh God, who did he wrestle? Cesaro wasn't even Cesaro yet.
Was he still
Claudio?
I don't know if he was Claudio in developmental though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he wasn't Cesaro. Oh, what was his first name? Antonio
Cesaro.
Antonio
but this
Cesaro,
but this is pre-television debut.
Yeah.
So it's that weird ground. So I mean, he was on the indies because at that time I wasn't familiar with him.
Mhm.
And everyone around me just went nuts when they saw him. And I was like, this guy really that good? And I watched him wrestle. At the time, his name was Husky Harris.
Yeah.
Oh.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Cesaro versus Bray Wyatt. Adam
Ooh.
Rose. This was not his Leo Kruger gimmick. It was something that he was doing like in between that. Like he wore like a satchel of like, like what you would see like the prom queen kind of wear.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a satchel.
Yeah. He wrestled. God, who else? It's just one of those things where it's like you go back, you're like, oh man, I got to see all these guys. And what was cool about that was, so at that time, I did 23, 28, 33, 5 years apart at each other. At 28, I'm watching Husky Harris wrestle. He's been off TV for like a couple months now. People mostly forgot about him. And 5 years later, I go back to Fan Access and I'm buying this special ticket to do the meet and greet with Bray Wyatt.
Wow, you got to meet him?
I got to do it, and my wife surprised me with WrestleMania tickets that year. Like she bought them for my birthday.
Man. That's awesome.
And we
when he was Bray Wyatt.
That's what he went into WrestleMania that year as champion.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Orton match with the worms.
With the worms. Yeah.
And he took at least a minute to speak to every person who was in line with him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So because it's one of those things where I had this small interaction with this guy that you can tell was just so thankful for the people there wanting to see him. I learned a lot. And I don't do comedy at the level that Bray Wyatt was in wrestling, but I learned a lot that weekend, and I remember thinking, I was like, man, this dude is so grateful. He's so happy that people want to be around him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've tried to not take for granted since, where if somebody does come up to me after a show, like I really, one, want to thank them for coming, and I want to thank them for their kindness to seek me out afterwards to tell me what they like or, what they enjoyed. And, because I don't have a legion of millions of fans, hey, add me on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I'll follow back, whatever.
Yeah.
Just, let's stay in contact. And I will say I've been actually not successful, but I've had friendships develop over the years because of that.
So
No,
before, one sec, Joe, hold on. I don't want to miss this. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go for a part 2 because there's still kind of stuff that I want to hit on, and we're going to cut this short and we'll join back up because there's no way we can just stop and we not talk about Boy Meets World.